refresh it and all that. So, okay. Let's try this again. Here we go. Uh-huh. Oh, wow. What a shot. Oh, what a shot. Thunder Cheeks. Great.
You are watching
This video will contact some photos. Still got it wrong. Don't say I warned you. Okay, I won't say that you warned me about stuff. You never warned me about stuff. Viewer discretion is advised.
Midland is a good-sized town which is located in Texas. Just because it's a good-sized town, it doesn't mean accidents never happen. Examples like
truckaccidentlaw.org,
cars, and buses. And in 2012, a parade float was struck by a train 8 years ago today. And this is the story of the 2012 Midland, Texas train versus truck crash.
But first, an ad. Great!
Opera GX is the world's first browser for gamers. It's an internet browser for gamers like you.
Who cares? Because I sure don't. Do you, Gladys? No? Me neither. My goodness. We've been through this already.
On November 15th, 2012, a eastbound Union Pacific
Eviction Mike already
was headed towards Shreveport, Louisiana from Los Angeles, California.
Louisiana.
The consisted of 4 engines with Union Pacific AC-45CC-TE locomotive number 7877 in the lead, Union Pacific SC-78 8497, Norfolk Southern -940CW 8934, and another Union Pacific AC-45CC-TE number 6753 with 84
more numbers
intermodal
for
cars
every
loaded with
typo
containers.
that's in these videos.
The train had 2 crew members and was traveling 62 miles an hour as it was passing Midland, Texas.
That seems so slow compared to like every other train crash.
Meanwhile, 2 flatbed trailers being used as parade floats were carrying 26 passengers each. 12 of them were the United States Armed Force veterans were traveling southbound on Garfield Street in Midland, Texas. The combination vehicles were being used as Hunt for Heroes parade float for the Show of Support nonprofit organization honoring U.S. military men and women. Around 4:35 p.m., the 2 parade floats were beginning to cross the tracks. The crossing had bells, gates, and lights. As police cruisers were blocking the street,
can you get any closer to your mic, please? Thank you.
The train tracks, and as the second one was about to cross, the crossings activated, warning of an oncoming train.
Seriously,
As
get
the
away from your
second
mic.
boat was still crossing the tracks, the gates began to come down and strike some flags on the right side of the truck. As the engineer saw the truck in view, he knew that the truck would not clear the tracks in time. He quickly blew the train's horn and slammed the train's brakes into emergency to hopefully to avoid a crash. As the second parade float was still crossing the tracks and was about to clear it, it was too late.
Man, even as a simulation, it's just uncomfortable to look at.
The Union Pacific intermodal collided with the rear end of the second parade float truck at 4:36 p.m. The force of the collision caused the truck's trailer to turn near like a 90-degree angle. After the accident happened, one police officer and a cruiser who was helping blocking the traffic for the 2 parade floats to go by immediately called for help, and soon fire trucks and ambulances arrived on the scene within
Kind of a
minutes
weird
to help
choice
the
to me
seriously
to
injured.
use some
Witnesses
music.
later said that some people jumped
Man,
out
they
of
give
the
me
parade
copyright.
float just before the collision. Of the 26 passengers on board the second parade float truck, the impact killed 2 veterans and 2 more later died in Midland Memorial Hospital.
I'll be
16 other
honest, I'd be
people were
surprised
injured.
if
The truck driver survived, as
if
did the train crew.
no one died from that.
It was the worst accident in Texas. Secretary of Defense Nino Pala made a statement expressing condolence to the victims' families.
Condolences, but sure.
But people are wondering, how could a crash happen like this? And why?
$1 million question!
Who was responsible? And more importantly, why did those 4 veterans have to die?
I said, the more I hear great ads. The more I hear his voice, the more he uses those questions, the more he sounds like Thunderbolt.
Raid
Who
Shadow
cares?
Legends is a dark fantasy RPG. Raid is
Man,
all
I don't care about stupid Raid Shadow Legends. Get that from my face. YouTube algorithm.
Accident investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board were dispatched to the accident to determine the cause. On November 17th, the NTSB stated that the parade float began crossing the tracks after the warning bells and lights were activated, and while the gate was lowering. The flashing lights and bells began 20 seconds before the train entered the intersection, and 7 seconds later, the gate began to come down. It was 1 second after that. 12 seconds before impact, the parade float began crossing the tracks. The train sounded its horn 9 seconds before the collision, and seconds later, the engineer activated the emergency brakes on the train. Based on these conclusions on the video evidence of a dash camera mounted in the police cruiser, a forward-mounted camera on the train, and the train's data recorder, the NTSB also did several tests involving a truck and 3 locomotives each. In November 2013, the NTSB issued its report concluded that the probable cause of crash was the failure of the city of Midland and the parade organizer, Shore Support Military Hunt Inc.
Sorry,
to identify and mitigate the risk associated with routing a parade float through a highway railroad crossing. The NTSB also concluded that the city of Midland failed to follow and enforce its own injunction allowing the Shore Support Parade to take place without a permit from 2009 to 2012, and failure to notify the railroad in advance of the parade. Following several months of the investigation, it was learned that Union Pacific was reimbursing with taxpayer dollars to install signal gates at the crossing, and Union Pacific agreed with the state of Texas when Union Pacific installed the signal gates at the crossing. Union Pacific will program the signals to provide motorists for at least 30 seconds of a warning time before arrival of a train. However, despite agreeing with the state of Texas that Union Pacific will program the signals to give motorists at least 30 seconds of a warning time, the Union Pacific programmed the crossings to only 25 seconds of a warning time. However, Union Pacific knew about the crossing just 10 months before the accident. As a result of the news, 43 people sued the Union Pacific for negligence for not taking action about the crossing before the accident, but the Union Pacific denied it. But however, despite the evidence that the Union Pacific was at fault, the case was dismissed on January 29, 2015 because the case was too weak. So the families created a post on Facebook saying Union Pacific does not support veterans and accusing the railroad company for promoting itself on all American colors on their company logo, and says that the company's actions led to the crossing accident and it was time to take care of the victims and their families. However, Union Pacific made a statement saying that the National Transportation Safety Board and all Texas courts said the railroad was not responsible for the accident, and about veterans, Union Pacific said that veterans are a critical part in our company. In the end, the truck's trailer and Union Pacific 7877 was repaired and put back into service, while the other locomotives were undamaged and returned to service. But in 2018, Norfolk Southern 8934 was rebuilt into an AC44C6M and renumbered to 4141. All locomotives continue to be in service as of today. 8 years have passed since this crash. Today, a memorial stand was at the crash site to remember the 4 U.S. Armed Force veterans who lost their lives. But sadly, more cars, trucks, and buses were getting hit by trains on this day. But hopefully, an accident like this would never happen again.
I say that all the time. Okay, you guys want more from Rail? More of me looking at Rail Fan and his